Hey gang, can you believe it? We're actually on the head now for that Intek. This is the exhaust valve, and this is the valve that is dropped. It's not really necessary for me to take this one out, but I'm going to anyway because I figured since I've got everything off, I'll go ahead and give them a quick lapping after I get everything set and in place. And what happened was this valve guide dropped. It dropped to the point where it crashed the exhaust push rod, as we all saw in the previous videos. So I've taken one out and I'm going to show you how to take the other out. It's pretty simple. Takes 5/16. When you take that out, the entire assembly comes out. The rocker arm, your stud adjustment, or your push rod adjustment, everything comes out at once. One complete assembly. And what I've done, so that I don't get them mixed up, is the exhaust valve, I just took and hit it on the grinder real quick. I don't know how well you can see that. Just put a little mark right there so that I know that that's the one that is the exhaust. So now, how do we get these out? There's a number of different ways to get them out. And you guys might say, well, it's domed underneath there, and I'll show you. So when I push on that to unlock the keepers, which you can see nestled right in there, it's not going to work. But as you can see, it did work in my case. So how did it work? Well, it's actually quite simple. Let me get this other one out here. And you just push down on them. I use a magnet typically. I didn't expect that one to pop out like it did. But how was I able to compress that spring and the valve nut go down? That's pretty simple. I just took a stack of washers and set them underneath so that they push down on that. But you do have to make sure that you put something there because it's quite a deep concavity there. And looking at the exhaust valve seat here, I mean, it looks awesome. So next we're going to actually drive that out. I'm going to go ahead and take it all the way out because when I go to use this, the Loctite 620, it has to have contact with everything. And another thing, I want to make sure I have no oil whatsoever anywhere on this. And I've got some cleaning to do. So I'm going to get that cleaning done. Once I get that cleaning done, to get all the, I'll show you here in just a second. Let me get these set down in the valve springs so that they stay home and don't go running away on me. They're so tiny. Now I just drop them down in and I keep them separated. Like I've got my exhaust side is over here, obviously, and my intake is over here. I'll pop that valve out. Now, exhaust valve does not have a seal. Intake valve does have a seal, so you're going to want to check the condition of your seal and make sure that it's in good shape. If not, you may have to replace it. I've got quite a bit of junk on the intake valve here, which is indicative of, I don't know how well you can see that. See all that crap? You know what that is? That's that wonderful ethanol gas we run through these things. So it had 250 hours on it when I got it, a little under 250 hours on it when I got it. And the lady, I'm sure, did not have any clue about using ethanol versus non-ethanol fuels, or at least treating the ethanol. So I'm going to hop over on the lathe and actually make a jig to knock this valve seat out as squarely as I can. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn a piece of stainless down to this, well, it'd be the exhaust valve, so not that it really matters. Turn it down to this diameter and then leave a shoulder here so that when I'm driving it, I'll have a guide, so to speak, if that makes any sense. So let me get on that. I'll get that sucker knocked out. We'll get this thing completely degreased, de-oiled. We'll get all the rest of this black crap out of here, or as much of it as we possibly can. I'll be scraping and doing that for quite a while to get it all out. But I can show you guys a little better now exactly what was plugged up and blocked off. Let me go ahead and turn it around. Might be able to see a little better. Okay. And using my handy dandy magnet, you have a passage here. As you can see, I can move that down and it comes out the bottom. That's an air passage, and then you have another air passage here. Both of those air passages were completely blocked. So that was so totally and completely Zippo's negligence that this engine let go the way that it did. Most generally, I make sure that everything is clean before I put something into service for myself or for anybody else. But I was lazy. This was for me. It was a freebie. So I just started using it. And due to a leaking valve cover, all that oil got down in there and just clogged everything up, picked up a bunch of dust. It just wreaked havoc on it. So anyway, that's enough of the chit chat and the babble. And the exhaust seat, there's just a ton of muck inside that. Just a ton of muck. And I am not positive that the intake didn't move too. Let me look here. That would not have been the hottest side. Boy, that's some dirty gas going in that thing. Give me a second. Get a flashlight. I want to take a look at something here. Alright. It does not look as though the intake has moved. The intake valve has moved. I'm going to pull the valve cover off of the other side and make sure that the intake is in the right spot. And I'm going to go ahead and peen the intake as well. Just peen it. That's all I'm going to do. And I don't recommend this for people that are wanting to get into the business of small engine mechanics. But, and I can also see right here that that intake valve was not seating completely. So I had some blow by. If I'd have done a leak down on this, it would have definitely proven. Yep. Got a good bit of cleaning to do. We'll get the cleaning done. The top of the piston's got a considerable amount of carbon buildup on it as well. So I'm going to get in there and clean everything up. And I'll see you guys on the next little tidbit where I've got that valve seat out. And then I get ready to put it back in. Okay, the most important tool in my shop, absolute most important tool in my shop. An hour has elapsed. I scrubbed, I scraped, I scraped, I scrubbed, I scrubbed, I scraped. You guys may have remembered inside here, the intake was just black, just so full of crap. Got all that cleaned out. There's the intake valve. It had a bunch of carbon on it. Got that all cleaned off. And cleaned up the exhaust valve a little bit. Like I say, I'm going to lap it. There's a lot of lapping videos. I'm not going to do that just to keep the video on the shorter side. But I got as much of that. It was on there tough. This was my arsenal of pick it and scrape it and get rid of it that I used to get as much of that stuff out of there as I possibly could. And like I say, I worked on that sucker for an hour. My back is screaming. So the next thing we're going to do is I explained to you that I was going to knock the exhaust valve seat out, and it is, I don't know how well that's going to show, but hopefully it'll show. Let's see what we can do here. I need 5 hands. Alright, well, the exhaust valve seat is right there, Well, you may be able to see. You can see up towards the body of the head where there's about 15 thousandths of an inch that is exposed that should be that way. So what I'm going to do is to drift the valve seat the rest of the way through, all the way through. And I've not made it yet, but something similar to this. See how it's got a shoulder? Well, I'm going to make it so that the ID is exactly right, so that I've got something that I can squarely knock that out with. Then after we get her knocked out, we will clean her up real good. There's no more oil to be found anywhere, so we're going to knock that out, and as soon as we get that knocked out, we'll mark on the valve guide where I need to stop, and I'll have to do that by driving the valve guide back up this way. And I know it kind of sounds counterintuitive, but that's where my line is, and that's where I'll be able to see and tell that I've got that valve guide in the right spot, because I don't have the spec on the relationship of that valve guide on where it has to be this way. So I'm going to use that existing line that is in there on that valve guide in order to get it in the proper position. And then we will take a center punch. Now, of course, everything's going to be coated with the wonderful Loctite 620 when I go to drive it in, and then I'm going to go around, all the way around, and peen on this side, and I will also come in here and peen on this side, so that what I'm essentially doing is squeezing that aluminum around that valve guide so that hopefully it will stay put. And then the last coup de grace is going to be, I'm going to take my welder and take the tip of my welder, and on the exposed part of the valve guide, I'm just going to blip, just like that, on the top and the bottom. Blip, blip. My hopes is what that will do is it'll distort the metal top and bottom on the valve guide, so that if it does slip, that little distortion there that's going to be left top and bottom is going to keep that valve guide from moving too much to cause another wreck. But with everything that I'm planning on doing, you know, this 3-step process that I'm wanting to do, will hopefully, fingers crossed, I didn't know I could still do that with the Arthur that I got. You guys want to talk about arthritis? See here, these hands have been run through the mill. I had one of my buddies, Robert, comment, you can see all the scars. I have a pigment issue with my skin, and you can see that every single scar I have ever had magically appear on my hands, and it gets worse in the summertime. Alright, there's just a little bit of goofy babble. So I'm going to drift that out. Excuse me, I'm going to drift that out. When I get that drifted out, I'm just going to go through the processes that I told you I'm going to go through. Then we'll show you the finished product afterward, and it's going to all hopefully be clear as mud when we get to the end. So I will catch you guys when that sucker is back in position and ready for reassembly. Zippo later. I'm out. Okay, gang. Got the valve seat back in. Get it up here so you guys can see it up close and personal. You can see the tick marks, and the 620 is curing currently. See the tick marks there. Tick marks on both sides. Next thing I'll do is do that little dollop of weld. Now, the valve guide dropped, so I'm just going to dollop it up top. I don't think it's going to come back up, only down. So we'll get that done, and after we get that done, we'll be able to put her back together, throw her on, adjust the valves, and bench run it. Zippo later.